Welcome. In this video, we'll learn how to forecast sales and margins in general, as well as the concepts of customer acquisition cost and customer lifetime value. All this to try to justify a marketing investment. I'll start by showing how to gather great information for free for large companies, as well as for small companies and companies that are private. Then I'll show you how to use a template to calculate both the cost and the gross margin. In the second part, I'll use examples of how to use marketing mix modeling. And I'll show you the formula for customer acquisition cost and customer lifetime value, and also a story, a real story that shows you how to get facts, real numbers for customer acquisition cost and customer lifetime value. I think that story will help you memorize the formulas more easily than just if you were to look at the formula itself. Then I'll show you marketing investment, the incremental net sales, as well as to when to use gross margin and when to use net margin. As I did in the past, I'll be using Annie to read the script that I have prepared, and then I'll be highlighting the different concepts on the slides myself or showing how I get the data myself. I hope you enjoy it.
How to find information about public companies. Please refer to the video, How to Find Financial Information, for further details. 1. Google Coach historical net sales, or the name of the company, followed by historical net sales. 2. If you find the information on Statista, use it, and then go to step 3. 3. Go directly to the source, survey name Tapestry Incorporated 10K Report 2022 in this case, or copy the report's name, and then go to Statista at the NYU Virtual Library and download it as a premium user for free. Note, it's easier to find information on Statista through Google than through the Statista's premium link at most libraries.
Let me do it live so you can see the process step by step. So we said that we will go to Google and go with Coach historical net sales and see what we get. So we go through the different results, and this one is the one that we're looking for. So we'll click here, and we will get the report that we want to have with the sales for the last 10 years. Now, when we try to download the data, it will tell us that we have to register, and then when we register, it will tell us that we have to upgrade to a premium account, but we don't have to because we have access through the NYU library, or if you don't have access to that one, through other public libraries. But I will also want to show you the point that I was making before through Annie, and that is that it's much harder to find the data when you go to Statista itself. Look, let me show you. This is the website for Statista, and now I am logged in through NYU. And if I type Coach historical net sales, you will see that it tells me that there are no results. And that is just because the browser from Google is much, much better than the one that is within Statista. So what we will do is we will grab the name of the report, and then we're going to copy the name, go to Statista, paste it, and search for it. And now it will find it. And then you click on it, and then you can download it. I like both Excel and PowerPoint. Excel will give you all the data, and PowerPoint will give you all the nice charts. So with that, we have been able to get the data from Statista.
How to make pro forma statements, forecast sales, cost, and net margin. Let's go back to Jenny. Jenny is about to graduate from NYU, and as part of her capstone class, she needs to write a business plan for a company. She figured she would investigate expanding her shoe business by opening a New York City retail store. She researched how to get a bank loan to finance her business and learned that she would need to provide a P&L, balance sheet, and tax returns for the past 3 years. In addition to that, she will need to do a pro forma, or estimates, of her sales, cost, and expenses for the next 3 years. These are the suggestions I gave Jenny and over a dozen students who went on to start their own businesses. 1. Spend as much time doing market research, including financial analysis, as you do designing your product or service. Learn from the mistakes of others. 2. Research competitors by interacting with them as a consumer. 3. For large public companies, look at the past 5-year CAGR, compounded annual growth rate, and consider how the competition will react if you grow faster. To calculate CAGR, try this free link. https://cagrcalculator.net/result.
Great. Let's see how I do this now. So I'm going to go to Google again, and I'm going to type Nike as a competitor. Nike, well, let's go with WSJ for Wall Street Journal, Nike financial statements. I'm going to see that is right there. Click on it, go to financials, income statement. And then I have the numbers for Nike as a potential competitor for the last 5 years. Now, then I'm going to go to this other link that we have here to calculate the compounded annual growth rate for this other company. And I'm going to go back to the Wall Street Journal and look for the last period. So these were the sales back then. And these are the sales in the last period. And I got the results for 5 years. So I will type 5 here. And that will give me the compounded annual growth rate of 5.53%. I will round it up to 6%. So this is much easier than if we would have gone into Excel and tried to calculate it ourselves.
Forecasting sales. Competitors' historical data. Once you have the data for different companies, calculate their CAGR using the link above. This would give you a ratio, for example, 3%, 4%, or 5% for these companies over several years. This is real data, what other businesses have been able to achieve. Forecasting the sales of a public company. Based on the growth for the last 5 years for a company, you can make an educated guess on how much they can grow in the future. As we shown previously, it takes less than a minute to download this from the Wall Street Journal, where it's done on a consistent basis. Forecasting the sales of a small private company. Jenny went back to www.bizbuysell.com and www.businessesforsale.com and searched for any retail shoe store for sale in the US. She was asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, and was then provided with the P&L for 12 stores on sale. The sellers were reluctant to share their tax returns, but she explained that banks and the Small Business Administration would require her to provide those to finance the loan. She got them. By looking at the growth of the number of retail stores, she could reasonably assume how much the stores would grow.
Now, once again, let me show you how this works in real life. So I will click on the first link, which is for this company, BizBuySell. And then what you will be able to do is you will be able to search for any business in any industry, anywhere, right? So you could pick New York or California or whatever. It will give you a list of all the different industries, and then you can search within that industry. For example, we could go into restaurants and food and then search there and then try to do a more specific search. So that's one. Then for the other one, which is business for sales, it's the same process, right? So we will go here and then we will type, as an example, coffee shop. And it will give us a listing for all the coffee shops that are for sale. And then we will be able to click to be able to get, all the information that we want. So we do want to do this. We want to contact the broker, and then you will have to sign something called an NDA, where you are saying that you will not, disclose information to someone else. But just by clicking on some of them, you will be able to see some of the financials that we want to get, right? Like the sales, they call it here turnover per week, and the rent, and so on. So all this information is free. All you got to do is just to click on the right place, and you'll be able to get all that information.
Forecasting sales for new products or startups. To estimate the sales, look first for the market size for a category similar to your launch. Use Statista or Passport. Both are available for free at the NYU and other libraries. Once you know the market size, estimate what market share you will achieve. For example, if you are launching a new coffee product and the market size is $100 billion, you can estimate you will achieve a market share of 1%. Therefore, your sales will be $1 billion. Don't overworry about your estimate. At the largest global companies, we make educated guesses about it.
So let me show you now how to do this in real life. I will first go to Google, and I will search for the market size of coffee. I will put the word Statista first, and then market size coffee. And it will get me the results that you just saw. And then I can click on this, and as I showed you previously, have access to all the data and so on. So that will be one way of doing it. The other way to do it will be going to Euromonitor or Passport. It may be better if we write those words. So we say Euromonitor, Passport, market size coffee. And we click on it, and it will show you all the different reports, and that we have to pay $1,200 a piece to have access to it, which is something that we don't want to do. So we'll go to the library that, in this case, I have access to, the NYU library, and I'll have to log in and all those things. And then I will be taken to that page because I have a bookmark for it, and we'll be able to do a search. So let's say that we say coffee market size. And I want something general, not just RTD. I want to see the whole data for coffee. So it gives me this report. Then I could click on geographies and go, for example, to North America. I'll click on North America and view the data set. And this will give me the market size of the coffee for the different types of coffee. You see here that we can see it both in millions of dollars and also in tons, which is some real good data that we want to have access to. We can download all this data. So here is the way that you can download the data and look up data both from Statista and Passport.
Forecasting cost and expenses. Repeat the process you used for net sales. Either gather the data from public companies or small businesses, look and cost as percentage of sales, and apply that ratio to your sales. For example, if for the other companies you see that the average cost as percentage of sales is 50%, assume the cost for your business will be 50%. Do the same for expenses. If you are unable to get the data from small companies, look at a public company. download their P&L, and use their ratios. See how we did that in Chapter 3, Analyzing a Competitor's P&L. Research competitors by interacting with them as a consumer. Jenny visited several retail shoe stores and made a thorough analysis of them. She then compared what she saw in each store with the financial information gathered from businesses on sale. More tips. Find more responses to questions posted by students on how to do a strategic plan on the link below, free access.
Just scan the QR code to get access to it. Great. Now we're going to move to part 2 of this lecture, and I'm going to walk you through each one of the processes again with another example and explain the concept of customer lifetime value and customer acquisition cost. Enjoy.
Let's now use a real example to quantify the value of marketing investments. There are 2 methods to analyze the financial performance of such investment: payback and return on investment. We'll now use payback and discuss return on investment later. Let's summarize the parts that we will need. Customer lifetime value, CLV or LTV. Incremental sales. Incremental gross or net margin.
A good variable to compare customer lifetime value is customer acquisition cost, CAC.
Customer acquisition cost. The formula to calculate customer acquisition cost is simple. The cost of getting new customers is divided by the number of customers we get. Imagine a bank investing $4 million in marketing, discounts, and other costs to get 2,000 customers. The cost to acquire each customer would be $2,000.
Thanks, Annie. I think that many times for some of you, it will be easier to remember inside of the formulas through stories. So I'm going to share a story now, and hopefully that will help you with, going through the formula in a more easy way.
When I moved to Turkey, I implemented Kaizen. One of my colleagues told me we could get $1,000 per employee from banks if we made a deal for which the salaries would be paid through that bank. I thought that was hard to believe. It sounded like too much. In the US, back then, banks would pay $50, nowadays, $200. I remember that when I was doing my MBA, banks would give away a toaster or an alarm clock if one opened a new account. I went through Washington, D.C., opened accounts at different banks, and kept the items to give away as presents. It was a lot of fun. In Turkey, we invited banks to submit bids for our business, and the proposals went from $0 to finally $2,000, adjusted for inflation, per employee. We passed the bonus on to our employees, who were delighted. The bonus for a factory worker making $400 was equivalent to 5 months' compensation. This photo is from when I was explaining our scheme during our summer party. Implementing this change taught me 3 things about banking and dealing with suppliers.
I guess
Customers don't like to change banks. While negotiating with different banks, a colleague from my team, who was making a relatively high amount of money, told me, "I appreciate what you are doing, but I prefer not to change banks. I already have all my payments set up on direct debit, and it will be a pain to change." This learning made me realize that investing in customer acquisition costs, be it through a marketing campaign or discounts, makes most sense when customers are likely to stay. 2. Always have multiple suppliers. Banks competed for our business, and that is how we managed to get a larger bonus than any other company. When you are planning your marketing investment, get quotes from different suppliers. 3. Customer lifetime value. The investment banks made was so high that I was intrigued by how they could justify it. I had lunch with the managing director of one of the largest global European banks, and he explained it. We recovered $2,000 on credit card interest charges in 1 year, he said.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. Sorry that I interrupted you. So now let me continue with this story. And we got the customer acquisition cost. Now let's try to think about the value of a customer. And I will have Annie once again read the script that I have prepared for you. Annie, you can go ahead.
Customer lifetime value. How do banks make $3,000? Let's continue with this real-life case to calculate the customer's lifetime value. The formula is the cash we get per year, or transactions, times the number of years the consumer is retained, or the number of transactions. I keep bank accounts at numerous banks worldwide for research purposes, to know how good or bad they are. I incur no interest charges by always paying my credit cards in full, which I highly recommend to others. Thus, I propose we don't assume that all customers will incur $2,000 in annual credit card interest charges. Let's pick something in the middle. Let's imagine that the average consumer who got the $2,000 will generate ½ or $1,000 in revenue through interest charges and other fees. The deal was for 3 years. Our employees would be paid their salaries through that bank for 3 years. The value of each customer was then $3,000, $1,000 per year for 3 years, regardless of whether they moved their account to another bank after 3 years.
Thanks, Annie. So, if you do this a bit better, you will then go into calculating the marginal cost of servicing each one of these loans. Now, the default rate for credit cards is super low. It's about 1% in the US, so it's minimal. And to keep it simple, we are going to just leave the example as it is. So what we have learned here is that the cost to get each one of the customers was $2,000. And then the value, the lifetime value of each one of the clients was $3,000. The reason why I like this case is that it's clear cut, right? You know that the reason why you got this new client was that you spent the $2,000. And you know that you are for sure going to get $3,000 because the contract is for 3 years. For this section, I'm going to ask Annie again to read out the script, and I will highlight each one of the slides.
Marketing mix modeling. Base case and marginal or incremental sales. The most common mistake marketers make is to forget about base sales and miss the marginal sales concept. None of my students will have this problem because even if they miss it on their assignment, I make sure they learn it by repeating the process for the strategic plan and on the final exam. Here is an example I share with them. First, research facts. Research the annual advertising or marketing spending for your company. Research how much your company spends on marketing for a project like yours. For your idea or product launch, you need 3 items. How much are you going to invest? How much are you going to grow your incremental net sales? What is the gross profit margin for your product or idea? Marketing or advertising investment. Research the annual advertising or marketing spending for your company. Download the annual report and utilize the search function, Ctrl+F on Adobe, to locate mentions of marketing or advertising. Search for advertising expenses on Statista, e.g., Procter & Gamble Advertising Expense Statista. Apply the advertising to sales ratio for your project. For instance, if P&G allocates 3% of sales to advertising and you're launching a new product, consider allocating 15% of the incremental revenue in the first year. 3% x 5 equals 15%. Analyze your company's marketing spending for a project like yours. Marketing campaigns should have a payback of 1 year. new product launches or extensions up to 3 years. Incremental net sales and estimates. Research what your sales are before you implement your project. This is the base case. Research how much sales increased in the past. If sales have at most increased by 7%, it's unlikely they will grow by 80%. Look at the historical 5 years on the Wall Street Journal financials. Account for cannibalization. If you were launching Haagen-Dazs Dulce de Leche, would your consumers who were going to buy chocolate get both or just swap? Unless you are getting new customers or have them buy both, your incremental sales are 0. As an example, at P&G, sales in 2019 were $67,684. By 2020, sales grew by $3,266, or 4% to $70,950. However, sales were growing by 1.2% anyhow from 2016 to 2019, thus the marginal increase was 3.6% or $2,454. Example-based net sales, advertising, and gross margin. These are Procter & Gamble's numbers in millions. Forget that. Imagine that this is a small business, and these are the actual figures in dollars. There was an increase in advertising from $6,751 in 19 to $8,200 in 21. Was it worth it? Marginal net sales, advertising, and gross margin. Compare incremental sales and advertising only. In 20, sales grew by $3,266 or 4.8%. However, sales were growing by 1.2% already asterisk, thus the marginal increase was 3.6% or $2,454. The gross margin in 2020 was 51%, thus the incremental gross profit was $1,256. Payback, 575/1, 256, was less than a year. Gross profit margin. Unless you can do a detailed analysis of the production cost for your product, use the overall gross margin for your company, as shown in the annual report. The assumption will be that if the cost is higher, economies of scale will reduce cost and you'll achieve the overall gross margin. Include all costs for your project. If your project involves creating an app, you must quantify and include the cost of creating an app. Hint, it's expensive. When you start a project, you are better off using third-party manufacturing. Why would you build a factory if you don't know whether consumers would buy your product? Gross margin or net margin? Gross profit margin only considers the additional costs of making more products. It doesn't consider additional expenses in marketing, finance, and HR headcount, or any other expenses. For small incremental net sales, it makes sense to assume you won't need more people and use, in our example, P&G's gross margin of 50%. Net margin considers all expenses. From the additional taxes you'll pay on the additional net income to the people you'll hire for major increases in sales. P&G's net margin is 18%. For small increases in revenue, use gross margin. For major increases, net margin. You could also go line by line on the P&L and make a more accurate calculation of the impact. There are 23 lines on the P&L from gross margin to net margin you would need to consider. Problems and solutions in marketing mix modeling. Problem, the change may be just pricing. Solution, research also volume growth. Problem, the change may be just competition. Solution, research also market share growth, session sales growth. Problem, the change may be just market growth. Solution, always look at market growth first. Problem, the change in gross margin may be driven by cost changes. Solution, use your research on pricing, volume, market share, and market growth to isolate that impact. Problem, global, aggregated numbers are affected by mix. Solution, do a deep dive into a market representative of the entire universe. Problem, there is no data for a product or service we want to launch. Solution, use as a proxy a similar product or service.
Great, thanks very much, Anya. Hope this was useful. You can go back to the different slides, and you can also, scan the QR code here and then give us your comments on how we can find and use more information to make this analysis useful.